I had a massive fear of public speaking. And I would literally run out of rooms. I would come out and blotches all over my face. And the anxiety was huge. And that was a big fear that I had to get over when I started writing my first book. And my spirit guides went, well, you can't exactly, promote a book if you can't talk about it. So I found a past life where I'd been persecuted. I'd been accused of something and then executed. And for anybody who's got a fear of public speaking, it's always going to be some version of that. You found a past life, and as I did, and it's a death-related fear. So if you've got this fear and you get in front of an audience, and could be even just one or two people sometimes, then your soul goes, holy cow, we're being judged again. Get out of here. So you get that fight or flight kind of response. But so often, once you find the source of a fear, and all you have to do is remind the soul of what happened. You find this past life source, and often just the act of reminding the soul, that was then, this is now. And it will just, so I always say, not with a bang, but with a whimper, it just kind of goes, oh, okay. It actually can be very, very quick. So I got over the fear of public speaking, which I thought I never would. I got over it within a few weeks. It just sort of dissipated.
Ainslie MacLeod, welcome to Fear Unzipped.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so excited. First of all, you popped in with Brian Grijalva, which was, he's visiting you, and I love him dearly, and that was such a huge treat for me to see him. Yeah. I did want to tell you, Ainslie, I've known you since 2008. You didn't know that, but I have. And I've read all your books, and I even tried to get a session with you, but it was like 2 or 3 years out, and that just kind of went by the wayside. I desperately wanted a session with you. You were the first one that really got me, after reading Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, it got me into soul connections, the way we come in. I mean, you're the first one who I learned that we come in with certain soul types. Yeah. And so it's been incredibly enriching for me. And so you've been a part of my growth, a huge part of my growth. So wonderful. I wanted to share that. I do want people to know that you are an illustrator, and you started out as an illustrator, which you're probably still doing.
No. I haven't illustrated for almost 20 years.
Oh, really? That's so interesting.
No, I switched to oil painting a few years ago.
Oh, okay. But you're still painting. I'm
still doing art. Yeah.
Yes. Because I felt like you'd still be doing it. You were an atheist, which I completely love, and a skeptic. Oh, yeah. And then you became a psychic that even had psychic on your license plate. Yeah, I mean, that's full circle. You're an internationally acclaimed past life psychic, spiritual teacher, award-winning author of several books. This is the one that I have with me here, The Old Souls Guidebook, which was kind of like a Bible for me for a while. And probably many people say that. I do want to read one thing from the beginning of this. It's really short, but I think this explains your work and why it's so important that we learn from you.
Okay.
And it is, find the page. Okay, because your mind, body, and spirit are inseparable, your soul's lifetimes of experience affect every aspect of who you are, from your personality and beliefs to your talents and fears. Without knowing who you were, you can never truly know who you are. And so many of us say, who am I? What is my purpose? We have no clue. So I'm tossing it to you, Ainslie. Would you share with us your origin story a little bit about how you were an atheist that came to be a psychic? Because I know you shared it a lot, but a lot of people, my listeners, have not heard it.
Yeah. Well, I do tell, there's one story I tell a lot, but yeah, I was kind of bumbling through life, and kind of like, looking back, I always felt like a pinball, on a machine bouncing from just one trauma or experience to the next. And I was directed. I mean, I knew sort of like I could always get a sense of whether I was doing the right thing or was on the right path or whatever. But I was stuck in the belief that there was nothing beyond. And the weirdest thing was that I was always drawn to psychics, and I told myself I was going to see them because I wanted to debunk them. But the truth was, I really was fascinated. And of course, it's because it ultimately is what I was supposed to be doing. And but it's cognitive dissonance. I was holding on to two different things. One was I'm an atheist. There's nothing beyond. And the other one was there's this whole world of psychics and precognition and stuff. So there were a couple of big epiphanies, but the real big one, the real one that got me started on my path was I was living on the West Coast, and I'd moved from Scotland to England to the States, and I'd ended up after a breakup in the Bay Area, and I was having a struggle finding some place on the planet that I really felt was home, and it's nothing ever stuck. I never felt any place I really belonged. So I thought, well, I'll give Hawaii a try. It didn't work either. But while I was there, I had a session with a psychic. She's telling me, your Uncle John's here. He's a spirit guide. And I'm going, yeah, he was an atheist like me. Wouldn't have anything to do with that stuff. But of course, I wasn't understanding how things work on the, once you're on the other side. And so I was wandering around a bookstore. It was actually it was a day after the session with the psychic telling me that he was there. And I'd heard that from a number of psychics that he was a spirit guide. And so I'm in this bookstore, and basically, to cut a long story short, I just turned a corner, and there he was. Like, he'd been dead for 10 years, but he's standing right beside me for only literally about a second, maybe 2 seconds maximum. Just there, but kind of solid and real. It wasn't like a fuzzy, ghosty kind of thing. He was kind of like I remembered him, only even more sort of accurate. It was so weird. And there was a message that came with this apparition, or whatever you call it, and it was about working together. And so I didn't do anything with it when I was there. I went back to the mainland, and I was in a very quiet place. I was living in a houseboat, and very quiet and on the water, so it was very conducive. And so I just thought, well, I'll give it a try. So I just sat there feeling like a bit of a chump and going, okay, John, if you're there, hello. And I can't even describe exactly what the communication's like. My spirit guides call it clairaudience. I guess that's the closest thing. But it's like getting words, sentences. So it started coming through, and it was very difficult, challenging. I had to really work at it, and it's like any talent for intuition. It's a past life ability. We develop it over millennia, and but like anything, playing piano or engineering or whatever you come in to do, you need to practice it. So I got very interested in doing the work, and I practiced for 3 years before reading anybody. I'd always had this, right from the get-go, a big sense of, I have a tremendous responsibility here, because I knew from my own experience how I'd go to see a psychic and I would really act on if it felt right, I'd act on what they told me, and I put a lot of store in that. So I knew how much people do that. So I was very worried about kind of going out into the world and not being fully formed or not good enough, or sending people off in the wrong direction. So I worked for 3 years, and then spirit world is kind of going, looking at their watches and going, is he ever going to do it? And so I just put some ads up and started getting some clientele, and then later worked out of a shop, and it just sort of kind of grew from there. And I wrote a book, which I initially thought was just going to be a giveaway to clients, and then it's I found an agent, found a publisher, and then it got published, and I got an interview with Oprah, and it was like, holy cow. Even as a psychic, I wasn't kind of expecting all of this. It was like, I thought I'd have a self-published book with 100 copies and giving them away to clients in the shop. And but that's kind of how I got started. And over time, the focus of what I did sort of changed a little bit. It wasn't totally clear, even to the spirit world initially, what the specialty kind of would be. I did a little bit of finding missing people, but it was not my thing at all, and it wasn't something I wanted to do. It was just it's too emotional, and I just didn't feel I was the right person. I found some missing objects and felt, well, that's not exactly getting me up in the morning. It's not excited. But I'd always been fascinated, fascinated about where do our beliefs come from? What makes us the human beings that we are? I was, even when I was very young, I was always wondering, why does one person believe something so diametrically opposite to the next? And I remember that literally from watching TV. I was probably about 10 years old, and I'm watching, it was the segregationist from the South, George
Wallace?
George Wallace, thank you very much. What is wrong with people like that? Because it wasn't about lack of intelligence. It wasn't about lack of access to knowledge, but there was something there. I remember thinking, actually, maybe people should send them books that they can read. But why are they so bigoted and horrible? And so when I started doing this work and talking to the spirit world all the time, they gave me the system that I use. It's actually, some of the concepts there, they're nothing new. It's been, they've tried getting this stuff out over the centuries, soul ages. I mean, we all have an idea of that. It's not, it's not my spirit. They didn't invent that, but they sort of codified it, I guess, and it gave me a system for breaking down who we are. And one of the biggest things that I got initially was, oh my gosh, this explains the difference between political left and right, between more sort of narcissistic behavior and more altruistic behavior. It's really to do with the experience of the soul. And to put it simply, the older the soul gets, the more it realizes we're all connected, the more empathy it develops. The younger souls who are unfortunately running things right now are a little more self-absorbed. They don't have that. I mean, they see the difference between young souls and old souls is kind of often the difference between seeing what divides us and what unites us. Older souls see that it's from your own experience. I mean, if you've had 100 or so lives in all different parts of the world, you're changing gender all the time, you're changing location, all your circumstances, it really helps you to identify with others. So the older soul's more likely to look at somebody who's down on their luck and have compassion and want to help them. Because
they've had those experiences before and they don't realize it, but they have.
Yeah.
Was there anything that when you were starting, and even now, that really made you fearful while you were doing it?
Well, so funny. It's like you were listening into our conversation last night. We were just talking about this, that, I tell people about, encountering a ghost or something. Oh my God, were you scared? And no, why should I be? No, I was puzzled, but no, the spirit world is endlessly loving, and you tap into that, and I feel very safe when I'm talking to the spirit world. I feel very protected. So no fear whatsoever. It's so funny. It really never popped into my mind until, I hate to name drop, but it was Oprah who asked me if I was scared when I saw a ghost. And I'm going, God, I never really thought about that. I mean, it's like, very puzzled because I couldn't make sense of it. But yeah.
Ainslie, this is so interesting because I see beings, and I'm never scared. And I grew up the most terrified, anxious child. And I could see beings, but I didn't really understand what it was. It was sort of kind of in the back of my mind. I don't know. It never came forward where I would talk about it because nobody talked about it.
Right. Yeah.
I have more fear about living the human existence. That's where my fear comes in. Doing the podcast, putting my face out there. Terrified. I was terrified.
Yeah.
Yet I was guided very clearly to do this. I mean, the words, the verbiage, the everything came to me.
You really know, don't you? When you're being guided, you do something. And very often, part of our life plan, part of the soul's life plan, is to overcome your fears. So, like I like you, I was very anxious when I was younger. I was very nervy. I was always on really high alert. There was some childhood trauma. There was, I thought when I was in my 20s that the way I would die is when somebody came up behind me and said hello. It was like, whoa. I was kind of a bag of nerves and huge fears. I had a massive fear of public speaking. Mm-hmm. And I would literally run out of rooms. I would come out and blotches all over my face. And the anxiety was huge. And that was a big fear that I had to get over when I started writing my first book. And my spirit guides went, well, you can't exactly, promote a book if you can't talk about it. And it's going, yeah, okay, as physician heal thyself, I had to do what I was doing for other people. So I found a past life where I had been persecuted, I'd been accused of something and then executed. And for anybody who's got a fear of public speaking, it's always going to be some version of that. You found a past life, and as I did, and it's a death-related fear. So if you've got this fear and you get in front of an audience, and it could be even just one or two people sometimes, then your soul goes, holy cow, we're being judged again. Get out of here. So you get that fight or flight kind of response. And it was crazy. Oh, God. My biggest fear was red robins, or whatever you call it. Was it round robins, as they call it, where people are going round in a circle, introducing themselves or whatever. And I'd be inside, I'm dying, I'm panicking, my heart's kind of beating like crazy. And I go, oh, excuse me, I got a headache or something. And I'm pulled out of so many rooms. But so often, once you find the source of a fear, and all you have to do is remind the soul of what happened. You find this past life source, and often just the act of reminding the soul, that was then, this is now, and it will just, as I always say, not with a bang, but with a whimper, it just kind of goes, oh, okay, we've been holding on to this crazy fear for 20 years, and we'll just let that go, or something along those lines. It actually can be very, very quick. So I got over the fear of public speaking, which I thought I never would. I thought I'd go to my grave with this. It was so debilitating. So many things I couldn't do. It affected so much of my life. And then, I got over it within a few weeks. It just sort of dissipated. And as I like to joke, now you can't shut me up. Up for all this time that I didn't speak.
You think about that. I worked at a PR firm, and I had a lot of Hollywood clients, and I loved it. They were in front of the camera. I was behind the camera. I was so comfortable in that space. Mm-hmm. So unbelievably comfortable. And I was good at what I did. And then when this came into me, I said, I'll just do audio. That's fine. I'll just do this and I'll do audio. And my son said, Mom, you have to do YouTube. You've got to be on video. And I went, oh my God, no. And what's so funny is once you start this, it's like facing the tiger in the eyes. It's like a pussycat, it just, things shift. But you helped me a lot because I had thyroid issues after I gave birth to my kids. And I remember reading that thyroid is probably, in a past life, my voice was shut down.
Yes.
And I actually do feel like I was burned at a stake. I have a huge fear of fire, and it just resonates with me deeply. And also, I get extremely cold. And I think I had one where I died in an avalanche. That like really resonates with me. I also had some really great past lives that I can kind of recall. But we carry so many fears. And in science, they say you come in with two fears. One is the fear of falling, and one is the fear of loud noises. But your soul comes in with many fears.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I made a list, and I just want to, we don't have to go through every one, but okay. I think I related to every single one of them. Fear of authority, loss, inferiority, betrayal, failure, intimacy, self-expression, powerlessness. I think so many of us are so afraid of our own power that we almost are afraid to find our purpose, because then we actually have to do it.
Oh, we have to take accountability and all that.
Accountability, and then there's fear of death, of course, and rejection. I think I've had every single one of those, some more than others. And so if you were to tap into, just my life or somebody's life, and they're struggling with something, do they come in and do they tell you, I'm struggling with agoraphobia? I'm afraid to go outside my home.
Some people might, when I'm working with people, this has actually been interesting over the last 25, 27 years that I've been doing this, is that people in the main have not specifically come to me saying, I have this particular fear. More often it's been, I'm looking at a past life on their behalf, and then I'll see something, they fell from a horse and died, and I'll ask them, do you have a fear of heights? And they go, oh, terrible fear of heights. But then, talking about facing your fears, that's one that I love. It was very early on that I was talking to a client, and I said, oh, have you had a fall? There's sometimes some other reasons for a fear of heights, but I said, do you have a fear of heights? Oh, yeah, I can't go up one step on a ladder. And I made some joke about skydiving or whatever. And the person goes, oh, yeah, I've done skydiving. And I thought this is so interesting. And I found it a lot with people with a fear of heights, that they won't go up a ladder or go to the edge of a tall building, but they'll bungee jump or throw themselves out of a plane. And it's because the soul is pushing you all the time to face your fears. And also, it's incredibly exhilarating if you actually have a fear and then you conquer it. You do your bungee jumping, and then you feel like you can take on the world. So, yeah. But we all come in with multiple fears. You're a very old soul, and a lot of times there's a sort of myth, there's an idea that when you are a very old soul, you're going to be kind of all zen and kind of Buddha-like or whatever. And actually what I get from most people when I'll tell them, you're a very old soul, and they go, well, how come I got so many fears, anxieties and worries? And it's actually really common, because as the soul ages, the veil between this plane and the next really starts to thin. And your conscious mind and your body tap into it makes a very easy connection with the soul and of course spirit guides. And so it's great because you tap into the good stuff, because that's about really understanding the core values, what we're really all the goals that we're all trying to achieve, which are things like love, peace, truth, understanding, these higher values. That's great, and older souls tend to have that down. But you also tap into all these past lives and the related fears. Yeah. And so it's I've never met anyone with just one fear. I mean, it's always going to be a few.
Yeah, it is incredible. And what I say is, as you learn more about kind of marrying your being human with the spiritual world and listening to your guides and things, it's not like your life becomes like skipping and easy, and but I can maneuver through things much faster. So things that used to terrify me, Ainslie, paralyzed me, where for a week I would just be thinking about it over and ruminating it over and over in my mind. I can get through it in like 10 minutes. So that's the thing. It's not that there's a magic pill that once you start connecting, that life becomes it does become easier because you're not drowning in the anxiety, but you still get hit with a lot of traumatic things, things that are challenging. That's not going to go away, but we can maneuver through it better.
It's how you roll with it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because, life is still going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, it would be nice if we all, as we became older souls, life was just more peaceful and so on. But actually, a lot of older souls tend to choose very busy lives, very textured lives, because they are trying to overcome the fears and get a lot of experience. And especially if you've got a few recent past lives where you got taken off your path and you didn't get much done or you died young, then you'll make up for lost time in this life. Very often old souls are choosing lots of experiences to directly challenge the fears. So almost to act as a springboard to push you into actually dealing with it. A very common one is if you're working through a fear of rejection, which is probably one of the most common fears, causes you in this life to feel like a bit of an outsider, like you don't fully fit into the world, especially when there's so few similar old souls. The majority of the population is so much younger in their thinking. So you've got this fear of rejection. So what the soul says is like, well, let's get some triggers to bring this fear up to the surface. Now, the triggers don't have to be very big, and they often come just from life itself. I mean, some people with a big fear of rejection, which, by the way, comes from abandonment in a past life and often dying alone. Maybe battlefield death or something, or being abandoned by your mother. So your soul says, okay, we don't want to keep dealing with this fear, keep having it coming back. So let's face it. So it might choose circumstances like having a family, coming into a family where maybe your parents are working all the time, they're sort of distracted, or maybe there's some kind of abandonment by the mom, or they're not totally there. But the fear can be triggered very, very easily. It can be a common one is making a baby sleep in their own room, and they don't like that. It's a real trigger for rejection. So it comes up then to be worked on it, like things like finding community and belonging, or maybe being the one to bring people together. So when my last book came out, the one you were showing, the Old Souls guidebook, I did a lot of podcast interviews. I might have done 40 podcast interviews that year. And I discovered that every single podcaster that I was working with was working through rejection. And one of the things that draws you to do this work is that you're creating community. You're bringing people together. And I found that was 100%. I didn't find anyone who wasn't, any podcaster who didn't have that fear of rejection. It's somewhere, I'm not saying every podcaster would have it, but just that was my experience of lots of them. And it was so fascinating. What a great way to create community and bring people together, because that's incredibly healing if you've got a fear of rejection.
Oh my God, that resonates so hugely with me, because my guide said to me, which my listeners have heard a lot, they said, when I said, no, I'm not going to do the podcast, and they gave me the name, I said, no. And they said, but what's going to happen is, one, you're going to transmute the word fear, because it's just a word. Mm-hmm. And you're going to heal yourself, you're going to heal the guest, and you're going to heal the community that listens. So you're all in it together as a community. They kept saying that to me. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about me doing anything special, just creating that community. And that is exactly what's happened, Ainslie. And my fear was, people on the internet aren't, you've heard awful things that people say. Well, I'm going to knock on wood. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate. But, you think about all that stuff, and you think about, well, I don't feel like getting rejected. I don't feel like, I don't want my feelings hurt. Yes. And because you're putting it out there for love and healing and kindness and compassion. And I want people I want them to feel safe and not feel lost and not be in fear. So I was fearful of what people might say to me. Also, I'm being very open about my abilities, which I had never done before.
Right. Well, you're really putting your neck on the line when you do that. And especially if you've had, as you know, you have this persecution somewhere in a past life, burned at the stake, presumably accusations of sorcery, or maybe being not conforming to the religious beliefs or something of the time. So you stand out, and you're being rejected by the community. You talked about the fear of authority. I mean, if people with authority and power are doing these awful things. So rejection, of course. Judgment will come up. That's a death-related fear. It's a phobia, but that's the one that causes often the fear of public speaking or standing out in a crowd. Self-expressions of fears comes up from that sort of thing as well. So you find often, if you've been persecuted in a past life, you may actually be extremely diplomatic in this life because you're kind of concerned about not offending people, or you want them to love you. And that fear of criticism is also related to judgment. But it can also, there's other fears that can be brought up, like low self-esteem issues come a lot from past lives. So when you start doing something like this, you've been treated as if you had no value in a past life. And so that low self-esteem shows up often when you do something like podcasting or writing a book or something, where you kind of go, who am I to be doing this? Who am I to think that I can make a difference, or who's going to really listen to what I have to say? But also that other fear that if you stand out, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
If you get put on a pedestal, you're going to get pushed off. So you hide your light. And that you don't want to do, because you are here to really overcome these fears. And
so
doing.
So do we have our fears? They serve a purpose for us to become who we really are. Is that why? Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, because the only thing really standing between us, being who we are right now and really being all that we can be, are fears. The more you overcome the fears, there's nothing left to interfere with who you really are and what you chose to be in this life. So when I start working with somebody, first session, when I work with somebody, the first thing I do is look at their personality, look at what they've chosen to be, and then that becomes like, I look at the soul age, soul type, and influences, and that's what they're trying to achieve. Most people I work with, they get it, it all makes sense. But certain aspects of them can be slightly suppressed, or we need to work on something. Things sometimes get out of balance. You see it with a lot of spiritual people who come here, and they are here to explore their spirituality, connect with the other side, to learn to use their intuition. And a lot of people who are very overtly on the spiritual path can be kind of very good at, they've got the intellectual part covered, they've got the spiritual part covered, but they often ignore their body as well. And at the very least, they should be doing yoga or something like that, because so many people, most of us are here to get into balance with that whole mind, body, spirit thing. And very many of us in this modern world are not getting the exercise that we need.
Yeah. See, that's so important to me, the exercise part. Like, I'm an avid gym rat and I am a hiker. I have to have that part, because without that, I don't feel like the human and spiritual, it just wouldn't work for me, because I've got to feel that. It's sort of like when I go to the gym, I call it my church. It's kind of, it's a place for me to just kind of unwind, just like nature does that for me. I took your test, your soul. What is the test called?
The soul type quiz.
The soul type quiz. It's on Ainslie's website, so all of you can do that, and I really recommend it. So I was kind of surprised with the results of it, sort of.
Okay. I'm
22% spiritualist, which I guess isn't surprising, and then I'm 14% creator, which I do agree. And then I was 13% leader, which I never thought of myself in that way. And maybe I'm thinking of leader differently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you actually gave away something about the leader just a minute ago. Something I discovered, I've actually been asking people who have a leader in their soul types. I've been asking this for about 6 months since I noticed it was a theme. Okay, you think of how you learn to be each of these elements. You had to have past life experiences of, like, if you got a leader in you, you have to have experiences of being a leader. So most of the past lives where you chose to have, or to be a full-blown leader soul type, it would have been in a position of some kind of authority, and very often outdoors. It could be leading a hunt, or maybe the military, or on horseback, but outdoors and active. And so I discovered by just hearing it so often that if you've got a leader in you, you're going to love hiking, because hiking represents those two things. You're out in the elements of nature, and you're active. And that is an incredibly fulfilling thing for somebody with a leader in them. So, you do have a leader. There's no question. I was wanting to talk to you about that. You are here to learn to use your authority, but the style of leadership is going to be very gentle. I mean, because you've got the spiritualist and creator, which, by the way, that pairing is very, very common. I see this all the time in very old souls. I always tell people, I see it so often because it works so well. So you've got a spiritualist, past lives as a healer, contemplative. Almost everybody I talk to is a spiritualist. I used to joke that, I used to say 95% of my clientele is made up of spiritualists. Now I joke it's probably 98%. So it's obviously the person most likely to be interested in this work or to read my books or whatever. So I work with spiritualists, and then I very commonly see that creator influence. And the reason there is that it gives you a lot of sensitivity, massive sensitivity, really deep feeling, but that really helps you to connect so much more to the spiritual world, which is a major goal for you. It actually helps you to develop your intuition, because that's communication with the spirit world. And but it's hard when you've got that high degree of sensitivity, because you really feel things very, very deeply. It can be very hard as a child growing up. I'm sure you were told you're too sensitive. Most creator spiritualists would hear that at some point. But you do have, for example, a leader in there, and it's why you're doing what you're doing right now. This is a kind of leader kind of thing you're doing, but it does give you an air of authority. But you're going to be like this gentle leader because of the spiritualist and creator coming before that. So I see this all the time. It's a really, I hate to say you're common, but it's a common kind of combination. Your leadership style is going to be more encouraging and inspirational because you're a spiritualist. First.
Yeah, and that really rings true to who I am, for sure.
Yeah,
it's interesting. When I grew up, I was terrified. I was a terrified little girl, and my dad was a spy, which I later found out. And so I was picking up on, he was gone a lot, and I missed him, and I would put his shoes by my bed. I would hold his shirt. It was really hard for me. And he was the most loving person I've ever known in my life. And so I was very, very, very fearful and very sensitive. Now, I was speaking to people on the other side, but I didn't separate that like I was doing that. Which I know will not make sense to people. I just didn't really think about it. But I did fear living, going to school. What was I going to wear? Am I going to look funny? Am I, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was when I started dating, it's when I heard from some men, you're just so emotional. It wasn't my family. It was not my parents. They were extremely loving and caring. And but it was when I started dating and I started hearing that, oh, you're just so emotional. What do you mean everything's the best? You say everything's the best, because I...
That's actually an aspect of the creator. I'm a full-blown creator. So, I have a tendency to talk in absolutes, or like this, last night we went out for dinner. It was the best dinner I've had in years. It's like creators do tend to talk in superlatives and, oh, it's the most amazing thing. And unfortunately, there's a pejorative or negative way of talking about any soul type. And if the leader's a little bit stronger in you, and it has been suppressed, by the way. I mean, it's in childhood. Something's happened. But leader girls are told that they're too bossy. And guys like me, creators, you get told you're too sensitive. I mean, I heard that all my life growing up. Helper types are told they're not ambitious enough. Thinker types are told they're too much in their heads. I mean, there's just a negative way of looking at this. Performer types are told that they're too attention-seeking, they're showing off or something. But, we're all just coming in to be who we are. And so often we get that knocked out of us by teachers, parents, other people's expectations. You should be more like your brother or something like that,
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I do when I start, talking about the first session, first part of that is to go to the basics, to find out who a person is, what you've chosen for this journey, because who you are is why you're here. For example, choosing to have a leader in your soul types somewhere in the mix implies that you are going to have maybe followers or somebody working under you, or in your case, people coming to you. And of course you will draw a lot of people who are looking for community, because that's what you're trying to create to overcome the fear of rejection too. It's a very important goal. And I think some people often forget how much it's not just about you and what you're doing, but it's what you're doing with other people and how they're connected. It's a responsibility that all souls have for other people. It's not just about your journey. None of us operate in a vacuum. And so it's a very important thing for you to create community and bring people together. It's actually what's called a spiritual act. And a spiritual act is where you heal yourself by helping those who suffer as you once did. Now, if you've got a fear of rejection, you've been abandoned at some point. So a lot of people with that fear need community, and will find that with podcasts, following people online. It's you're being a part of a group or a class or doing courses or whatever. It gives people who've felt isolated a sense of belonging. So you're doing great work.
Well, thank you, Ainslie. I feel like I'm really at the place I'm supposed to be. And I love my work in PR. I love having my company. I love everything that I did. I always felt there's something missing. There's something I'm not doing. There's a purpose. I don't know what it is. I can finally say, I feel like I have tapped into what that purpose is. And I can't articulate what that purpose is really. I do know that it's something about community. It's about people feeling safe, for me to feel safe, and for others to feel safe within my presence, and to just kind of, it's quantum physics, we're all kind of helping each other.
Yeah.
And when one feels better, the other can feel better, and the other, and the other, and the other. So I'm super grateful that my guides kind of literally knocked it over my head. They gave me so many signs that if I didn't do it, I knew somebody else was going to do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just knew that. And so I thought, okay, the last sign was just, okay, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I feel the same way, before doing the work that I do, the spiritual universe really had to, slap me about the back of the head to get my attention. It's why, ultimately I had to have these experiences like running into my uncle in a bookstore.
Yeah.
That was really because I was not paying attention. I had psychics telling me I was supposed to be doing psychic work, and I would always make a joke about, well, if I was psychic, I wouldn't be paying you, and haha. But, I had so many kind of blocks, and like some of the fears that I was talking about. I didn't just have that fear of judgment, and but I really struggled with low self-esteem all my life, and because it's a past life issue, this fear of inferiority. And I was like, who am I to be able to do that? I mean, I would joke about how unintuitive I was when, in fact, I was a lot more. I was suppressing it and trying to be something I wasn't, and so on. But that was actually going back to, I think, what a lot of people get from understanding when you get the picture of who you are, and it explains so much about why you're here. It really it aids self-acceptance and acceptance of others, because you start to realize that everybody's on their journey and we're all in different places, and you become much more compassionate. And I don't mean accepting bad behavior or anything. None of us are supposed to do that. But at least it helps you understand very often where people are coming from. And all comes down to that. That's why I think I always joke about when you look at your soul type and influences, what you've chosen as a personality for this life, it's like going to the doctor and getting height, weight, blood tests, scans, blood pressure, MRIs, X-rays. It's kind of, it tells you everything about why you're here. Why would you choose to be the spiritualist if you're not going to help people? Why would you choose the leader if you're never going to have some opportunity to use that authority? All planned before. Now, it doesn't mean that every aspect of your life is micromanaged or planned ahead of time. Some of the major themes are fears you want to overcome, places you might want to go. Location's a big one for old souls. Finding some place that works for you. That can often be about finding the community as well. It's one of the reasons, there's many, why old souls often travel or they move about. They go to different places, they grow at one place, they go somewhere for college, they go somewhere else to work, and so on. It's really mostly it's about finding other souls. Actually, it's a really big part of what we're all doing, is trying to find each other, members of our soul family.
Exactly. And they're often not your family members.
That's right. Yeah.
I was talking to somebody yesterday that, you can't choose your family members, but you sure can choose your friends. And I have this beautiful, beautiful community of friends and my family, my personal family, my husband, my kids. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. And then what about phobias? Because you talked about fear of heights and things. By the way, I did skydive, but I don't have a fear of heights. What about phobias? Because I remember one example in your, you had an audio book that I listened to. It's called Heal Your Past Life Fears, or How to Heal Your Past Life Fears, I think it is.
Yeah, that's right.
It's really great, and I recommend it because you also walk us through our past lives, doing our own exercises to tap into our past lives. Right. I remember the woman who had a fear of being poisoned, which is not a fear that you would think the average person would be scared of, right? Right. Can you share that story?
Oh, that story. Yeah, God, that's from years ago. Yeah, I put it in my second book. Yeah, it was. What was really interesting to me was that the fear of being poisoned. But it's one of those where it came up. I'm just looking at the past life, and it's not like she said to me, "Oh, I have a fear of being poisoned." I look at the past life. She had been a rancher. Now, I may not have all the details right. It's a long time ago. It is in my second book, but. Okay, so as far as I remember, she was a rancher somewhere in the pioneer days. She goes off somewhere, comes back, and a local landowner has poisoned a well, but he's also killed the wife and kid. They were poisoned by this horrible person. And I said to her, did you have a fear of being poisoned? And she was completely silent, and I maybe phrased it another way. Yeah, do you ever worry about being poisoned? And she's hyperventilating on the other end of the line and going, my God, she's going, I'm paranoid about being poisoned. And I'm going, well, yeah, I'm not surprised with that past life. And she's going, no, you don't understand. This has ruled my life. And she went into this whole story. I can't even remember now all the details, but it was if food was even a day old, it went out. I forget, water filtration systems. She was talking about, one thing I do remember is when her children, when babies came along, that was a major trigger for the fear. My God, she could lose a child again. And so she said with the baby food, if the top didn't come off the right little pop, she would throw it away. And her husband was always like, you throw thousands of dollars of food away all the time. And it was absolutely ruling her life. And it's typical of finding a very dramatic past life like that the healing happened very quickly. And she, no longer ruled by this fear. But that was a crazy.
And I mean, that really did rule her life. So is it as quick as, and maybe it's not overnight, just acknowledging it and seeing it and knowing it, and then your soul remembers that happened, and then it lets it go, like vaporizes it?
It pretty much. I mean, we are all different, and sometimes it takes a while. One of the longest ones was somebody I wrote about, I think it was in the same book, about body temperature issues. And it took about 6 months. But it'd been, up until that point, it was her entire life, 45 years or something. And then just, it took a little bit longer than most. But when it happened, it changed completely, literally changed her body temperature and her reaction to the cold. The reaction to the cold we sort of touched on before. Mm-hmm. I've talking of, origin stories. I used to tell my kids when they were little, they're now in their mid-20s, but when they were little, I would love to hear the story of my birth, because I made up something because they knew I hated the cold. And I said, well, when I was born fully clothed. And I tell them a whole story about how the midwife had to unbutton my little coat, the umbilical cord. And, it's just all this nonsense. But they go, tell us again about the umbilical cord. And I go, okay, I was born fully clothed. But I always hated the cold. I mean, hated. And I've had a couple of experiences where I feel like I want to die, and I'm holding myself and I'm shivering, and I realize since people go, it's 50 degrees. What's wrong with you?
That's me. That's me.
And you often see it. So it's related to dying in the cold in a past life. So hypothermia will almost show up as a discomfort with a cold. It can also show up as cold fingers.
I have Raynaud's.
Yeah, yep. That's typical. When we work together, which we'll do soon, I will... I'll absolutely help.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How quickly that can change. Like I say, it could be 6 months, but usually if something's going to change, it's within hours, days, and weeks.
That's amazing, because
or it doesn't work at all.
I've been taking thyroid medication since my son was born. Yeah. And then I related that to Raynaud's. And then after, learning from you, I know it has something to do with my voice and speaking out, which I think this podcast is helping me with that. And it'd be so interesting to see how that shifts. And, oh my gosh,
throat chakra issues are related to self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
Can actually be helpful. I'm not saying it's a cure or anything, but to sing, to really open up the throat chakra. And that trauma can go back to being shut down, being persecuted, or literally hanged.
Okay, I feel that I actually have a memory of being hanged. I mean, an observer's feeling of it. Like I don't choke when I think about it, but it resonates with me.
Yes. That's those little memories, those feelings like, oh, I think I was burned at the stake. I think I was hanged.
Yeah.
You are probably right. And because there'll be other signs. Things to do with the throat chakra can be sometimes your throat closing up a little bit. I don't know if you noticed earlier when you mentioned something about the throat, and I just cleared my throat literally a second before you said it. And because I would sometimes feel something.
Yes. Yes.
In an area. I've often had that. My healer friend, Brian, that I work with, who you've interviewed.
Brian Grijalva, we love you.
Oh, absolutely, we do. He's a wonderful, amazing healer. And he will literally feel it in his body. He'll know when somebody's got a shoulder issue because he feels it in him. I don't do it so often, but or nothing like he does. But I can sometimes feel those little things when I might be talking to somebody and I've got a little pain in my abdomen or anxiety in my heart or something, and then a heart or abdominal issue will come up. Nothing like the way he does it, which is just absolutely extraordinary. And we work together a lot, which is so we sort of tag team as well. Plus, we're starting a podcast together.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Are you? Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh wow, that's exciting. Okay, so there was something that intuition and fear. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that you suggest that we can tell the difference between what is intuitive and what might be fear-based?
It's a very hard one to separate. And one of the ways that I say it is that if you overcome your fears, then all that's left is intuition. So that would be a really easy way. If you're no longer being affected by your fears, but then you get like, you go on high alert around somebody or a situation, that then that's the voice of the intuition. A lot of it's just practice, since I find that generally people who are a bit older are often more intuitive than when they're younger. Most people are on a bit of a trajectory on that. They're usually, somebody's more likely to be more intuitive at 50 than they were at 20, generally. And one useful exercise that you can do is to look back on your life, look back on people you met particularly, and look at what your gut feeling was about when you first met that person. Because so often that's right. You just feel something is just a little bit off. And then what we do is we intellectualize, or we second guess. The intellectual part takes over, and we go, I don't know, maybe it's just because they remind me of my father or something. So, you don't trust your intuition, say, gosh, I must be wrong. Everybody else says they're such a great person. But there'll be, so often, like 6 months later, you realize, oh God, that person's a jerk. I wish I'd listened to my gut feeling. And it's not just about people. It could be about a job or whatever you're doing. But if you write these things down, you can go back and you can really, it helps to validate. You can look at the times that you listened to your gut and you're glad you did, or times that you didn't and wish you had. And it helps to validate that most people are more intuitive than they think they are, actually.
Oh, it's so true. That's what I say all the time. It's interesting because after doing this podcast, my intuitive abilities have skyrocketed beyond what they were. Yeah. And it's like a knowing. I just know. And I told you before, it was about 20 minutes before we came on together. I always do kind of a ritual in my office to get things ready and be in a really clean, clear, high frequency space for myself and for you and the community. And I was shivering. I was so cold, and spirit often comes into me like that. Like my whole body starts trembling. They change the temperature. And I don't know if that has anything to do with my past life of, if I was in some accident, but it is something that happens a lot. And then before I start, I often lose my voice in the very beginning. Oh. it didn't happen with you. It didn't, because we chatted a while before, but, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's funny that related to that is sometimes we get triggered by different people that on a soul level, we get, sometimes you feel a little uncomfortable with somebody and you end up, I don't know if you've ever had this, but there's a few people I've met in my life where I've been really kind of rude to them. Like, no, oh God, where did that come from? Or I say something that's really stupid, and that's because there's like maybe a trigger. It could be a reminder of somebody else even, or somebody from a past life, and you feel maybe a little uncomfortable, and then maybe if you're working through self-expression, you either don't say what's on your mind, or you blurt and you say something later. You go, oh God, I can't believe I said that stupid thing. So yeah, we can get triggered by memories of other people. Sometimes. You just meet somebody and just go, I just don't want anything to do with you. But other times you meet somebody and go, gosh, I really find them fascinating. Even if somebody you haven't talked to, you go to a party and you go, that person looks so interesting. I'd like to talk to them. This soul is nudging you. Actually, spirit guides are doing a big part of that, trying to get you to connect with people you're meant to or not connect with people.
I've really noticed that doing the podcast because I'm so lucky people, reach out. They want to be on the podcast. Some people that are really, really well known, Ainslie, but there is a resonance factor with me that they're very famous, yet there's not a resonance with me. They're perfect for other people, but not for me. And I've had to use discernment because from the day one, I said, this isn't about me. It's not about my ego. The numbers are going to do whatever the numbers are going to do. I have to bring in resonance. Yeah. And I've stuck to that. And it's the only way I want to do it. I don't want to do it otherwise. There's no point to do this,
Absolutely.
So
discernment is actually, that's come up in a few podcast interviews that I've done recently. And what I was getting actually during each of the interviews was that this person is casting their net maybe a little bit too wide to draw people in. They're using discernment to try and learn what is real, because there's so much, particularly in the spiritual world, there's so much bullshit out there, and
so true.
So much nonsense and rubbish being spoken, and sometimes just repeated because it becomes. Just conventional wisdom tells you this, so we've seen it written in so many books or something. It doesn't mean it's always right. And there are a lot of people who, that they do that spiritual bypassing sort of thing. They haven't really done the work, but they present themselves as spiritual, and they're not always. And learning discernment is actually a really big part of some people's experience. And so these podcasters I was talking about, it is something to learn. As they move forward, it will probably mean that they focus on more people who are really authentic. They'll start to really develop their ability to detect the BS or who's not, who doesn't really know what they're talking about. But it is part of what you're here to do as well.
Yes, I know that. And that's where your intuition that's why I really, really listen to it. Even though something could maybe help me in a certain way, but it's not the mission here, if that makes sense. Yeah. Ainslie, we just blew through that. I don't even know if I got to half of what I wanted to share with you, but we'll do it again.
I thought we were 10 minutes in. What the hell?
Yeah, no. Okay, so it's a time warp in here also. It's 5 minutes, and then it's an hour and 5 minutes. So it's
Yeah.
I find it fascinating, but I do have questions that I ask everybody, so I want to ask you.
Okay.
That's okay.
Sure.
Okay. When fear starts creeping in, what is your go-to strategy to help release it?
Oh, yeah. When fear, if something does come up, what I always do is I just will verbally, I will remind my soul that this is possible. This is probably just a past life issue. Just let it go. I also think about, is it real? Is the fear real? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. Am I really afraid of literally this situation? Or is it because I'm being triggered and reminded of other things in past life? So I really would sit down, even at that literal conversation with the spirit world, like, verbally out loud. And if it's just a sort of nagging kind of memory from a past life, sometimes I'll just do something to distract myself. I've been doing this long enough, so I'm aware usually if something does come up. I mean, I don't live with much fear, but if something does come up, it's like, oh my gosh, well, where am I being triggered? I try to identify it. For me, it's usually a fear of loss. That was quite a big one I had to work through. And of course, even if you've worked through a lot of past lives, they don't always just disappear completely forever, because you can step on a landmine, as it were, or some trigger comes along and reminds you of another past life. And so that suddenly becomes up and needs to be dealt with. But I do always try to figure, is it a past life issue? Is it just my fear of loss coming up? Or is there something more immediate? That I find that really helpful.
I think that's...
You mentioned, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no.
You mentioned rumination before. And that's something a lot of old souls will do, especially so many old souls have been, when you're so sensitive, as old souls tend to be, you can ruminate on things for hours, and especially when you feel it's injustice. Why would they do something like that? What made them do this? And you're trying to figure it out, and that's a really, really hard one sometimes to get over. Distraction can really help. Just if you find yourself starting to ruminate, do not stay in it. Do something. And that's often very useful when you've got the leader in you. So what you can do if you find yourself ruminating, take some action. Do something that's different, but don't just lie there if you're in bed or whatever. And just do something different. It could be just walk around for a little bit. Things I do, if I get into any kind of rumination, especially in bed, one thing I got from my spirit guides is don't lie there. Don't just, it'll just keep going, you get into the worry loop. The rumination is actually you're going between thoughts and feelings. That's, back and forth like that. So always think of it as a triangle and taking some action. That's like, get out of the loop. What I do is I get up and make a cup of tea, watch a bit of TV, walk around, whatever. It's just like break the loop.
Yeah, that is excellent advice. What's one of the best pieces of advice you've received in life, personally or professionally?
The first thing that jumps into my mind is not taking criticism personally, especially with, online stuff. I joke about, I have really good ratings for my 3 books on Amazon. They're 4.6 out of 5, and most of the comments are really great. But somebody left a review on my second book that I've said I've literally never seen a more scathing review of any book ever. It was like, this is the worst book ever written, and like pages of like why this person hated it. And there's a part of it that was kind of funny, and boy, but it really taught me that this is not about my book. This is about somebody who's being really triggered in some other way. So it really actually, although initially I'm going, holy cow, how can anyone hate me so much? It actually helped me to go, yeah, it's not about me necessarily. It's not that I can't take constructive criticism, and I think all that sort of thing is good. But if a lot of people are projecting, and they do that a lot, especially old souls get that a lot. Old souls are often very empathic, and they often draw in narcissistic behavior from other people, and those narcissists can be very critical. They can find the wounds and make things worse. And I think if you can step back and go, yeah, this is not necessarily about me. This is more their thing. That I think that's really helpful.
Extremely helpful. Yes. What does a successful life look like to you?
To me, a successful life is, I think for anyone, it's doing what you're meant to be doing, and in your work. It's having good relationships with people, having love around you. I mean, that's what we're all here to experience, whether we know it or not, whether we're blocking it or not. But we're all here to love and be loved, and especially the older the soul gets, the more it wants to express that compassion and empathy and experience love itself. So it is a successful life is, I think, ideally being surrounded by love, doing the right thing, acting from a place of integrity.
Ainslie, where can people find you?
They can find me on soulworld.com or ainsliemacleod.com or Instagram.
Okay.
I'm kind of all over the place.
We'll put all that in the show notes too, so they don't have to be writing all that down. And then this is where I say, if you like this podcast, please subscribe, because it helps. And when Ainslie and Brian have their podcasts, do the same for them.
Thank you.
It's so important. And leave testimonials, 5 stars. It just is so important and means a lot. It means a lot to me. I can tell you that. Ainslie, it has been such an honor to have you here. Little did I ever think when I was reading your book in 2008, whatever, or learned about you, that I'd be talking to you today. And that has been a huge privilege. Huge.
Well, honestly, the honor is mine. It's just been a delight. Thank you for great questions and giving me the opportunity to talk about my work, which I will talk about endlessly because I am so fascinated still by it after all these years. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. He's also a great musician, people. He's a great musician. Throw that out there. Okay, Ainslie, until next time.
Thank you. Again.
Yes, it's been beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.